Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Major League Baseball Trade Trees with me, your host, Evan Thompson, editor-in-chief and national writer at Sport Relay. In this series, we take a trade and go through how it developed over time. We go beyond the original trade, seeing what teams have done with the assets they gained from the trade. Some of the trees we look at are still active, and some have ended. For this trade tree, we will look at how the Ken Holtzman trade of 1971 helped bring 3 straight World Series titles to the Athletics and 3 Hall of Famers to the Cubs. First, the guidelines. A branch of the trade tree remains active when said player leaves and the team gets one or more human assets in return. In baseball, this happens in 2 ways. Obviously, the first method is for a team to trade the player in return for one or more players. The other method happens when a player leaves as a free agent and the team gets one or more compensatory draft picks. Also of note, in baseball, the only draft pick a team can trade is a competitive balance draft pick. However, they can trade minor leaguers all they want. When divisional play began in 1969, the Minnesota Twins won the first 2 American League West titles. Both seasons, they lost to the Baltimore Orioles in the ALCS. And in both seasons, the AL West runner-up was the young, up-and-coming Oakland Athletics. But in 1971, the Athletics broke through and won the division, the first of an eventual 5 straight AL West titles. It was the franchise's first appearance in the postseason since 1931 when they were still in Philadelphia. Major players on the 71 team included Gene Tennis, Dave Duncan, Sal Bando, Bert Campaneris, Joe Rudy, Rick Monday, Reggie Jackson, Angel Mangual, Vida Blue, Catfish Hunter, Blue Moon Odom, and Raleigh Fingers. Blue won the AL MVP in 1971, still to date the last time a switch hitter won AL MVP. As detailed in Volume 1 of A Complete History of the Major League Baseball Playoffs, written by me, the Athletics fell to the Baltimore Orioles in a 3-game sweep in the 71 ALCS. What hurt the A's the most was the starting pitching mismatch. The Orioles had 4 20-game winners that season, the second and to date last time that happened in the modern era, the other one being the 1920 Chicago White Sox. And if you knew that, you deserve a prize. Athletics manager Dick Williams had a plan to get around this. Games 1 and 2 were in Baltimore, with Game 3 and, if necessary, Games 4 and 5 in Oakland. The schedule was Game 1 on Saturday, Game 2 on Sunday, a day off for travel on Monday, then Game 3, and, if necessary, Games 4 and 5 on Tuesday through Thursday. Williams was going to use Blue for Game 1, Hunter for Game 2, then take advantage of the travel day and start Blue and Hunter in Games 3 and 4 on short rest. Well, Hurricane Ginger had other plans. Its heavy rains bumped Game 1 from Saturday to Sunday, Game 2 from Sunday to Monday, and wiped out the travel day. Williams now had to wait until Game 4, if there was one, to start Blue for a second time. Now, we'll never know if the series would have had different results had Williams been able to use his original playoff rotation. Nonetheless, the Athletics felt their missing piece was another starting pitcher. They had a surplus of talented outfielders, so pundits figured the Athletics were going to swap one for a starting pitcher. On day 1 of the winter meetings, November 29th, 1971, the Athletics did exactly that. They sent Rick Monday, the first overall pick in the first ever Major League Baseball amateur draft, 1965, to the Chicago Cubs for left-hander Ken Holtzman. The Athletics felt Holtzman was the missing piece in their quest to win the World Series, and they were right. They turned around and rattled off a three-peat, winning the World Series in 1972, 73, and 74. The only team in Major League Baseball, besides the Yankees, to ever win more than 2 in a row. They won the division again in 1975, but greatly missed Catfish Hunter in the ALCS, where the Boston Red Sox swept them. In 1976, the Athletics missed winning the AL West by 2.5 games, ending their remarkable run of consecutive division crowns at 5. In all, Holtzman started 153 games for the Athletics in the regular season and tossed 4 in relief. Over 1,084 and 1/3 innings, he went 77-55 with a 2.92 ERA, which is an 86 ERA minus, an 11.75 WHIP, and 11.0 WAR. Holtzman was also terrific in the postseason, starting 12 games and pitching 1 in relief. Across 70 and 1/3 innings, he went 6-4 with a 2.30 ERA and 11.23 WHIP, but that doesn't tell the full story. Prior to 1975, when the Red Sox swept the A's in the ALCS and Holtzman lost 2 of them, Holtzman was 6-2 with a 1.97 ERA and an 11.12 WHIP. And the cherry on top of it all was his hitting. In the 1972 World Series, he was 0 for 6 with a strikeout. But in 73 and 74, he was a monster. Between those 2 series, he pitched in 5 games, all starts. He was 4 for 7 with a walk and 4 runs scored. The 4 hits were 3 doubles and a home run. They were all extra base hits. And the crazy part was that the American League started using the designated hitter in 1973. So in the last year without the DH, he was 0 for 6 in the World Series. But in the first 2 years with the DH, he was an extra base hit machine. Some trivia. Holtzman was the last American League pitcher to hit a home run in a World Series. Furthermore, his homer, which came off Andy Messersmith of the Los Angeles Dodgers in Game 4 of the 74 series, was the last extra base hit by an American League pitcher in World Series play until Mike Moore, also of the A's, cracked a double off Don Robinson of the San Francisco Giants in Game 4 of the 1989 World Series. A big factor in the demise of the Oakland A's dynasty of the 1970s was the birth of free agency. In 1976, the Athletics began trading away their big stars that were approaching free agency. They figured they probably couldn't give them big enough contracts to entice them to stay, so they traded them. Their logic was that trading them would at least bring something in return. So on April 2nd, 1976, the Athletics traded Holtzman, right-hander Bill Van Bommel, who never made it out of the minors, and an outfielder you might have heard of named Reggie Jackson, to the Baltimore Orioles. In return, the Orioles gave the A's 3 players. The first was Don Baylor. Baylor played 157 games for the Athletics in 1976. He slashed .247, .329, .368. Going 147 for .595 with 25 doubles, a triple, 15 homers, 68 RBI, 52 stolen bases in 64 attempts, 58 walks, 85 runs scored, and a 2.9 WAR. Additionally, he got plunked 20 times, leading the league. Now, those who know his career numbers, this isn't a surprise because he retired as the career leader in times being hit by a pitch. Since then, it's been surpassed by Craig Biggio. After the season, Baylor signed with the California Angels, and since the A's got no compensation, that ends his branch of the tree. The second player the A's received was right-hander Paul Mitchell. He started 29 games and tossed 2 in relief between the 76 and 77 seasons. A 9-10 record with a .480 ERA, which is a 137 ERA minus, and a 14.58 WHIP gave him a negative 0.5 WAR. On August 4th of 77, the A's sold him to the Seattle Mariners, ending his branch of the tree. The third player the A's received was right-hander Mike Torres, coming off a strong 1975 season. In 76, he had an even better season, one that ultimately was the best of his career. He started 39 games, tossing 266 and 1/3 innings en route to a 16-12 record. Additionally, he had a .250 ERA, which is a 73 ERA minus, 11.94 WHIP, and a 5.3 WAR. Torres stuck around for the 77 season and started 4 games for the A's, going 3-1 with a 4.44 ERA, 114 ERA minus, 12.91 WHIP, and 0.3 WAR. But Torres was an impending free agent, and his salary demands were going to be higher than the A's were willing to pay. Consequently, on April 27th, they shipped him to the New York Yankees for 3 players: right-hander Doc Ellis, second baseman Marty Perez, and outfielder Larry Murray. None of these players worked out for the A's. Ellis tossed 26 innings across 7 disastrous starts, going 1-5 with a 9.69 ERA, which is a 2.49 ERA minus, an 18.85 WHIP, and a negative 1.3 WAR. On June 15th, the A's sold him to the Texas Rangers, ending this branch of the tree abruptly. Marty Perez lasted about a calendar year longer, playing 131 games at a WAR of 0 before the A's released him on June 19th, 1978. Larry Murray lasted 3 seasons, playing in 206 games to the tune of a negative 2.4 WAR before retiring in 1980. This brings the entire A's side of this trade tree to an end. Here's an interesting side note to this trade. Owner Charles O. Finley told the Oakland Tribune that the Yankees originally offered Ellis, Perez, and $175,000, but he asked for Murray instead of the money. His reasoning was, and I quote, "Do the A's need money? You bet we do, but the A's are out to win the World Championship in 1977.
Yeah, how do you finish again? Dead last?
Yes, Shooter, that is correct. The A's finished dead last in the AL West in 1977, a half game behind the first-year Seattle Mariners, and 35.5 games behind the first-place Kansas City Royals. On to the Cubs side of this tree. Rick Monday played 5 seasons for the Cubs, peaking in 1976, the only season in his career where he received MVP votes. He slashed .270, .366, .460 in 702 games for the Cubs, going .690 for .2551 with 114 doubles, 26 triples, 106 home runs, 293 RBI, 383 walks, 441 runs scored, and 11.3 WAR. The Los Angeles Dodgers had been pursuing him for 4 years, and on January 11th, 1977, the Cubs finally agreed to a trade. They sent Monday and right-handed reliever Mike Garman to the Dodgers for 3 players. The first, Jeff Albert, never made the majors and left after the 79 season. The second, and the centerpiece of the return package, was Bill Buckner, who played outfield for the Dodgers but played first base for the Cubs. Though he was never a superstar, Buckner had a successful run with the Cubs, winning the 1980 National League batting title with a .324 average, making the All-Star team in 1981, leading the NL in doubles twice, and receiving MVP votes in 4 separate seasons. He never finished higher than 10th, but still, he received votes in 4 separate seasons. In total, Buckner played 974 games for the Cubs across 7+ seasons. He slashed .300, .332, .439 in those games, going .1136 for .3788 with 235 doubles, 25 triples, 81 home runs, 516 RBI, 187 walks, and 448 runs scored, resulting in an 8.5 WAR. Buckner batted .300 or better in 4 of his 7 full seasons with the Cubs, and in the other 3, he never batted below .280. But in 1984, he did not get off to a good start, going 9 for 43 in 21 games. That's a .209 average. Meanwhile, Leon Durham, 8 years his junior, had taken over at first base. Durham was an all-star in 82 and 83 as an outfielder, but general manager Dallas Green had traded for Gary Matthews and Bob Dernier. With Moreland firmly planted in right field, Matthews and Dernier took over in left and center, respectively, moving Durham to first base and bumping Buckner out of the lineup. The Boston Red Sox needed a first baseman, and they felt Buckner's batting style would work well in Fenway Park. When Cubs starting pitcher Dick Ruthven went on the injured list, which was called the disabled list back then, they accepted a trade offer the Red Sox had been making for some time. Buckner went to the Boston Red Sox, the team he is probably most associated with. In return, the Cubs got a starting pitcher and a minor league infielder.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
The infielder was Mike Brumley. Brumley made his major league debut in 1987 and played 39 games for the Cubs that season to the tune of a negative 0.2 WAR. In February of 1988, the Cubs packaged Brumley with Keith Moreland, who lost his job in right field after the Cubs had signed future Hall of Famer Andre Dawson. The Cubs sent Brumley and Moreland to the San Diego Padres for left-hander Ray Hayward and closer Rich Gossage, a future Hall of Famer. That's the first Hall of Famer the Cubs got. Hayward never played for the Cubs. 1 month after acquiring him from the Padres, the Cubs sent him to the Texas Rangers for outfielder Dave Meyer and second baseman Greg Tabor. Neither player panned out for the Cubs. Tabor never made the majors, and Meyer played 2 games for the Cubs. Both left either during or after the 88 season. Couldn't find exactly when. That's kind of hard with minor leaguers. And the Cubs got nothing in return for either of them. Gossage struggled through 46 games for the Cubs in 88 to the tune of a negative 0.2 WAR, the worst season of his career. They released him March 28, 1989, bringing the entire Mike Brumley sub-branch to an end. The starting pitcher the Cubs received from the Red Sox was the second Hall of Famer out of the Cubs half of this tree, Dennis Eckersley. Eckersley, however, was not a lights-out closer yet. He was still a starting pitcher, like I just said. And although he wasn't a dominant force as a starter like he was as a closer, he was still pretty good. Up to that point in his career, he had received Cy Young votes in 2 separate years, had thrown a no-hitter, and had made 2 All-Star teams. He was the starting pitcher for the American League in the 1982 All-Star Game in Montreal. Eckersley pitched well for the Cubs in 84 and 85, helping them win the 1984 NL East crown and starting Game 3 of the NLCS against the San Diego Padres. In 1986, his production greatly declined, and the Cubs traded him during spring training in 1987. Overall, Eckersley made 82 appearances during his 3 seasons with the Cubs, 81 of which were starts. Across 530 and 2/3 innings, he went 27 and 26 with a 3.63 ERA, which is a 93 ERA minus, an 11.70 WHIP, and a 10.5 WAR. We later found out that Eckersley had fallen victim to alcoholism in 1986, which led to his decline on the field. He needed a change of scenery, and the 1987 trade did exactly that. He went to the Athletics for 3 prospects: infielder-outfielder Brian Gwynn, right-hander Mark Leonette, and outfielder Dave Wilder. None of the 3 ever made the majors, and the Cubs did not get any assets in return when they left, ending the Dennis Eckersley sub-branch and, consequently, the Bill Buckner branch of the tree. That brings us to the 3rd player the Cubs received when they traded Rick Monday to the Dodgers, shortstop Ivan De Jesus. Cubs fans who know their team's history just pump their fists in triumph, but we'll get to why in a few minutes. De Jesus slashed .261, .330, .336 in 738 games during his 5 seasons with the Cubs, going .756 for 2,900 with 115 doubles, 31 triples, 14 homers, 173 RBI, 295 walks, and 414 runs scored for an 8.3 WAR. Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, at the end of the 1981 season, the Phillies were being sold. Manager Dallas Green, who led the Phillies to their first World Series title 1 year prior, became the general manager of the Cubs. His full title was Executive Vice President and General Manager. The Phillies' longtime shortstop told the new owner he wanted a 3-year contract, something the previous owners had verbally agreed to. However, the new owner would not give him 3 years, deciding instead to trade him. The longtime shortstop had 10-5 rights, meaning he had been in the majors for 10 years, with the most recent 5 being with the Phillies. This meant that the Phillies could only trade him to a place he wanted to go. He could turn down any trade. Dallas Green told this player that he'd trade for him and give him a 3-year deal with an option. So on January 27th, Green sent De Jesus to the Phillies for this particular player. shortstop Larry Bowa. Bowa played shortstop for the Cubs from 1982 to 85 and was the everyday shortstop in 1984 when the Cubs won the NL East for the first time ever and played postseason baseball for the first time in 39 years. Bowa started all 5 games of that year's NLCS against the Padres. Overall, Bowa slashed .247, .296, .308 across 494 games for the Cubs, going .391 for .1584 with 55 doubles, 18 triples, 2 homers, 102 RBI, 113 walks, 169 runs scored, and a 1.5 WAR. His time with the Cubs ended when they released him on August 13th to make room for upcoming rookie Sean Dunston, the first overall pick in the 1982 amateur draft, and the Cubs' everyday shortstop deep into the 90s. When Green talked to Bowa before making the trade that brought him to Chicago, he said he wanted the Phillies to add a prospect. Then he asked Bowa how he felt about that prospect. Bowa said he really liked him, so Green had the Phillies add him as a throw-in. This is why the Cub fans who know their team's history pump their fists in triumph. Remember how I said that this trade brought the Cubs 3 Hall of Famers? This throw-in is the third one. Ryne Sandberg. Sandberg played 15 seasons for the Cubs from 82 to 94, briefly retired in mid-June, coincidentally, the same day that Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were found dead, oddly enough, then returned for the 96 and 97 seasons before retiring for good. In 1982, he came in 6th in the NL Rookie of the Year voting and even received 1 first-place vote out of the 24 cast. The winner was another second baseman, Steve Sax of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Sandberg made 10 consecutive NL All-Star teams between 1984 and 93, starting the game in 1984, then making 8 straight starts from 1986 onward. In the late 80s and early 90s, it was a given that the starting NL middle infield in the All-Star game was going to be Ryne Sandberg and Ozzie Smith. Sandberg also won 9 Gold Gloves, all coming consecutively between 1983 and 1991. He won 7 Silver Slugger Awards and received MVP votes in 6 different seasons, winning the award in his breakout 1984 season. He led the National League in runs scored 3 times, triples once, and home runs once. In 84 and 89, he helped the Cubs win the National League East title, but unfortunately for the Cubs, they lost the NLCS in 5 games both times. However, Sandberg hit safely in all 10 of those postseason games. In his 15 seasons with the Cubs, he slashed .285, .344, .452 across 2,151 games. He had 403 doubles, 76 triples, 282 home runs, 1,061 RBI, 344 stolen bases in 451 attempts, 761 walks, 1,316 runs scored, and a 68.0 WAR. When he retired, he had the most home runs ever hit by a second baseman. He's now third. And in 2005, the Baseball Writers Association of America voted him into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. So, in summary, this trade tree gave the A's immediate benefits as they won 3 straight World Series titles. That alone makes this a great trade for them. One could say they did not get much after trading Holtzman, but anyone involved with the A's at the time would probably say, doesn't matter, we won 3 straight World Series. Yeah, but you could have, who cares, we won 3 straight World Series. But you could have, what's that? Oh yeah, we won 3 straight World Series. The Cubs eventually got 2 players who put them in serious contention for the first time in decades, and both of those players are now in the Hall of Fame. One of those 2 players is among the most beloved Cubs of all time. So, what do you think of this trade tree? Leave us a comment. And if there are any other trade trees you'd like to see us do, let us know in the comments. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Ken Holtzman for Rick Monday trade tree. Stay tuned for more episodes of Trade Trees where we explore the intricate web of trades and their lasting impacts on teams. Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like. Click subscribe so you'll never miss an episode of this show, or of our other show, Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza. Tell your friends and baseball contacts. If you haven't done so yet, consider buying my books, A Complete History of the Major League Baseball Playoffs, Volume 1 and Volume 2. There are links in the description box below this video. And finally, bookmark and regularly visit sportrelay.com. Until next time, this is Evan Thompson saying so long for now.